Hey folks, this is Lucid, and we are going to be doing a national overview for Fomoria. Fomoria is an early age nation, and it has a lot of really cool things going for it. I think it's got an extremely high skill cap, a lot of versatile strategies. And what happened was I put this in S tier for early age, and some folks asked me, or one of my Patreon guys asked me if I'd do a video on it. So, yeah. Let's rock and roll. Now, I have a confession to make. This is my second time recording it. And the first time I recorded it, I forgot to turn my recording software on, which is kind of hilarious. Pretty classic move. But I felt dirty after recording it the first time, and it wasn't because I didn't turn the recording software on. It was because sometimes you do a guide or something, and you're just like, ugh, if I do this, and people are going to start doing this against me whenever I play early age. And there's some forces of nature you don't really want to unleash on the world. And that was how I felt after doing the Fomoria guide. So I will leave it to you after this guide if you feel sufficiently enlightened that I should feel sufficiently dirty. So, without any further ado, let's get into the nation. What is it? Fomoria is a nation of Furblog of the Fomorian troops and then the Fomorian giants with some Namidians mixed in. Now, what does that mean? Furblogs are basically better than human stats humans. They're like kind of better than humans. These Fomorian kind of pagan-looking creatures are size 4, which is an awkward size, with kind of bad stats, but good strength. And decent weapons. Like, they hit really hard, they just don't really... They have a hard time hitting. The Namidians are basically classic elves. Stealth, glamour, magic weapons, high defense, high attack. And they also have they have dark vision. They don't have spirit sight though. And then we have the unmarked. Well, we're going through the unit types. The Fomorian giants. These are the big boys. Size 6. They hit really freaking hard. They've got not great stats for attack and defense, but everything else is pretty solid. And these guys are also amphibious. Now. Again, super at high level. The nation, this is a nation made up of very powerful air and death mages. Lots of air and death, which is a very good cross path. They have recruit anywhere pretty high air mages. And then they have some budget kind of nature, earth, and water mages. Right? And there's a smattering of some of these on the randoms. Like this guy can get a water random. She might be able to get a nature random. And then this guy, yeah, he gets some randoms here too. So this is kind of like the magic path access that the nation has. And it's really good. It's really super good. There's a lot you can do with this. Now, let's get into it. So I want to start with the mages, because the mages are kind of the cool part. We'll come to the troops, but troops I think have a lot to do with the mages. We have scouts on scouts. We got 2 kinds of scouts. Pick your scout. And then we have the Furblog champion, notable for just being a commander with slightly better than commander stats and leadership. We've got the Fomorian champion, also still 60 leadership, more expensive. Going to be less vulnerable to some of the human kind of pick-off stuff. And then importantly, we have the unmarked. Unmarked are noteworthy for having 80 leadership, so you can start putting your troops into formation, 130 gold, and they kind of can thug, but I think what you're going to see is the Druid, who isn't much better, or who isn't much more expensive, is going to thug a lot better than these guys. But he would only thug if you have a good bless and you put gear on him. And the thing is, with gems in this nation, you're not going to want to be putting gear on unmarked champions. Nevertheless, they can lead around small raiding parties, and yeah. The Furblog Druid. Now we're getting into our mages. So 70 gold, very cheap. They come in a few randoms. They have an earth water, an air water, an air earth, and an air nature. We'll talk about what each of these cross paths do. Air water, not super notable. You can do freezing mists if, well, with a water gem and a water bracelet. Okay, it's going to be tough to do freezing mists, let's put it that way. But that's kind of the thing this cross path does. There's a few other items and stuff you can make with air water. There might be something I'm missing or not thinking of, but it's kind of a meh cross path. This guy you can do some fluffing with water, and you can summon elementals, but otherwise the water one is not super great. Air Earth, this is your only real Earth access on the nation. So if you can find a way to make Earth boots, then these guys get up to Earth 2, and then with Earth 2 they can get up to Earth 3 with Earth power. And with that, they can be buffing your troops. So they're also going to be outside searching Earth for you, forging Earth items. Earth items are really good on a nation with thugs and super combatants, and then Earth buffs are obviously really good on them as well. So there's that. And then we have nature. Nature is very good for buffing, very good for item forging. We're going to be limited to nature 1 on this nation unless you get it on your god. But if you get it on your god, then you have a pretty reliable source of nature 1 mages that you can throw a Thistle Mace on and do some of the good nature stuff. Whereas the nature 1 stuff is kind of meh. So anyway, that is the Furblog Druid. He's basically, he's giving you path access is what he's doing. He's got some point buffing potential with all of these 3 cross paths, and then he can do like air elementals or something in a pinch. You can also, I didn't talk about all the cross paths. Earth Air gives you like dancing shield and stuff, and it also gives you Rain of Stones, which these guys can potentially do with Earth Boots and summon Earth Power. And then that used to be a big strategy for Fomoria when Fomoria was actually, or when Rain of Stones was actually good. Now I think it's much more meh. But if you surprise somebody they're not expecting, it could still be pretty good. And then Air Nature, not too much, except for you can do Rainbow Armor, which is pretty nice. Okay. And coming over to the Fomorian Druid. Now these guys, 200 gold. You may be thinking, 200 gold, that's kind of expensive. But it's an Air 2, and Air 2s are always useful. What are the things that are noteworthy about being Air 2? Well, you can always Cloud Trap these. You can summon Air Elementals with 2 at a cost of 2 Air Gems per. And then you have decent thug options like Mist Form and Mirror Image and stuff like that. So Air, quite good for thugging. Also, Air 2 means you can do Storm Power and Thunderstrike. So every one of these guys is a Thunderstriker, which is a big deal. That's going to be really important for very important fights in the mid-game. Having some Fomorian Druids, throwing up Storm, dropping Thunderstrike, maybe dropping an Air Elemental 2 at the end of your Thunderstrike script. They come in a few different randoms. And at first pass, you may look at these and you may be like, well, that's totally, these are just incidental. They're going to be totally outshined just by, basically these are just Air 2 mages, and all these cross paths are doing is adding cost. And, yeah, maybe. The thing is, if you use these guys as thugs, these cross paths are pretty important. And what I have found for them, they're a little awkward in some ways. They're size 4 like the rest of the Fomorian dudes, so they don't fit super well in, 2 per square or whatever. So it's a little tricky for point buffing. But what I have found is the nature water combo actually can thug together if you send them in pairs with no gear. If you put gear on them, I kind of prefer to put gear on the water ones. And then we can talk about that, what this will look like. I'll do some thugging things at the end. I had when I recorded this video the first time, I kind of practiced. Not practiced, but I had tested out all the different thugging things. So I'm going to be a little foggy. We're going to mess up probably a couple times. This is to thug with these guys with items and stuff. These guys can obviously thug. But to thug with these guys without items, that is where it takes finesse. And that is what thugging is about. It's about thugging without a lot of shit. So anyway, these guys can do it. They're casters. They are magic phase attackers, they are air elemental summoners, and they are thugs. Okay, these guys are super duper good. And in my opinion, they are one of the core things that sets the tempo and the pace for Fomoria. What do I mean by that? I mean, you can basically elf people via air magic with a bajillion of these Fomorian Druids. Okay? And we'll come back to this, but the fundamental pace of Fomoria, as I see it, and this is why I think they're such a terrifying nation, is They build up a big bank of air gems, and then they eat an entire nation in 1 or 2 turns. And that is basically the way you want to do it. And you're very flexible about when you do it, how you want to do it, all of that jazz. But they're pretty GD oppressive. So that is the Fomorian Druid. Next up, we have the Namidian Champion. I'm already starting to feel dirty, guys. Just saying that. Imagining it happening to me. Okay, the Namidian Champion. These guys are notable for being stealthy. Stealthy is important if you're going to be leading your Namidian dudes around. And he's got good gear, so if he rolls out with these Namidian warriors, he can run around and be an elf and not worry about getting picked off. She is also stealthy, the Namidian sorceress, but she doesn't have gear and stuff, so if you're just doing like light raiding, you might not want to send her. That being said, these guys still pick up 2 recruitment points. You can only get them in the capital. And these guys also take 2 recruitment points, and you can also only get them in the capital. The difference is, this is 245 gold, this is 175 gold, but this guy, aside from just not dying, kind of sucks. You know, like, he's good at basically having some gear and armor and not dying when you roll out with your Namidian warriors, but he's not going to do much aside from that. Namidian sorceresses are legit good. They get a random of air, water, death, or nature. Obviously, the air and death are going to be nice because you're going to get 3 in each of these paths. Water is going to be nice for the death water cross path. You could potentially do something like Stygian Rains or something with this nation. You do have access to magic weapons. The nature cross path is kind of meh. It's not really great on this. It's probably the worst of the rolls you can get for the Namidian sorceress. Maybe there's something I'm not thinking of. But these are really good. You can crank these out of your capital super fast. And we'll talk about, I'm going to come back and talk about them again in a second after we talk about the Fomorian King. But the Fomorian King, this is your other cap-only mage. He's special, right? So side 6, 70 HP, air 3, death 2 on all of them, holy 2. And he's got air, water, or death as a cross path, or as a random. So potentially can be air 4, which means you can forge air boosters all the way up to being air 5. Potentially can be death 3, which is not quite high enough, by the way, to climb all the way up to like high death. You need to be death 4 to do that, to do like the death booster stuff. But, you know, death 3 gets you pretty close, and if you get like a lucky twice-born, I would say twice-born all of your death 3s just for the chance of getting a death 4. Twice-borning these guys, by the way, is expensive. It's 30 death gems. So I say twice-born all your death 3s, but really it's kind of like as many as you can justify and afford. These guys are expensive to twice-born. The water ones are interesting. They, again, you're going to be getting the water death crosspath, but you'll have that on the sorceress too. They're going to be your best like anti-super combatant dudes because they can do quicken self and liquid body and stuff and really get in deep. The death randoms are notable for being able to do the death super combatant stuff like soul vortex and invulnerability without needing a death gem or like a booster. Yeah. I think that's it. These guys are really, really good. I like them a lot. When they die and twice-born and come back, they come back as one of these monstrosities. Basically, you double their HP, and they get a free fear into chill aura. Well, this is from the thing. Yeah, and cold resistance. So they get and poison resistance. But they get the undead tag, which is not a great tag to have. But anyway, these guys are badass. They're super badass. Their defense is 16. I forget what these guys' base defense is. Yeah, 13. And that's with a shield, right? So their base defense is actually kind of shit. It's 11. Right? And this guy's base defense... Oh, wait, how is it? Oh, just from this? Okay. Never mind. It has the same base one. Oh, and he's got a heroic ability. Okay, so it's the same. But anyway, super good chassis. Importantly, these are also... I mean, these sorceresses are also big air death mages, but air death is one of the best cross paths in the game. How I think about which ones of these you want to get if you have the gems to blow on gearing people out as super combatants, etc., etc., you're probably going to want to go with the Fomorian King, twice-born Fomorian King. These guys are much cheaper to twice-born, by the way. You could argue they're a better twice-born investment. If you just need casters to run around, these are your boys, right? Like, you're kind of wasting a lot of money on the Fomorian Kings. I mean, their upkeep is about the same, but you're also going to get twice as many of these. So if you're just getting Fomorian Kings to, like, make skeletons or do Thunderstrike, you could make the argument you should just be getting Namidian sorceresses, because they'll have 2 times as many. And some of the Namidian sorceresses will be Air 3. Importantly, though, you could justify, hey, I want to get Fomorian Kings only once you reach a certain point in the game, just to have as many Air 4s as you can, because Air 4s are going to be able to drop some really important big battlefield air spells. The death randoms are important for some of the national spells that Fomoria has. We'll talk about those in a minute. I actually should make some of the summons real quick. Second. Okay, so the summons we get is Fomoria. Oh, we need to do the normal units. We'll come back into the summons. The units we get, we'll start kind of with the cool units, go down to the less cool ones. We get the Fomorian Giant. These guys are sacred. They're size 6 with a length 4 spear, meaning they can potentially do repel stuff, as can the Fomorian King. Decent gear. They don't have a hat, and they have 1 eye. So they're kind of prone to having their 1 eye poked out, which is kind of hilarious. They do have Spirit Sight, which means they potentially can murder Jen. If you have a magic weapon, Bless especially. And then over here we have the Unmarked. Size 4. I think they have just Dark Vision, not Spirit Sight. Am I wrong? No, they have Spirit Sight, damn. Oh wait, did I take it on my Bless? I probably took it on this Bless. I probably took it on Bless. Wait 1 second. I don't think those things will show up in my... Yeah, okay. This guy has spirits... Oh, no, this guy has dark vision. This guy has nothing. Okay, yeah, so it was from my Bliss. I was like, I don't remember that when I was looking at them before. So, yeah, but size 4, very killy weapon. 24 piercing damage is a lot of damage. And the attack is okay. It's not great, but it's, you know, it's not horrible. There's a couple problems with these guys, is you're only getting 1 attack per square. So almost every time you use Unmarked, you want to have a plan for how you're going to fill in the size 4 to... Basically, you need a size 2 unit to get in the same square as these guys. Which means you either need Skelly Spam behind them, which you can do pretty trivially, or you want to have some, like, Furblog Druids or Namidian Warriors kind of teamed up with them. That being said, and these guys are cap only, but coming out of your capital, if you take a pretty strong Bless, these guys can expand really well. I think the Bless that works best, like the main thing you have to fix is killiness, and then maybe a little bit of work on defensiveness. But honestly, killiness, if you have enough of these guys, like having a bit of attack skill, so you get the repel and better like killiness, these guys expand really well. But if they start getting surrounded and harassed, and you're only going out with like 3 or 4 of them, it starts being a bit tricky. I think you need like 5 or 6. I haven't done a ton of playtest expansion with Fomoria, but I've done some. Anyway, these guys are pretty solid. Next up, we have the Namidian Warrior. The Namidian Warrior, they're kind of the quality level of Sacreds. They're like a super high tier unit. They're cap only, so you can't get a ton of them. And they're elves. So they're really good. They're really good. Notably, they have dark vision, and they also have, or I think they do. I think I'm on the right page. I can't remember if some of our, well, they're not sacred, so my Bless wouldn't show up. But But yeah, their base stats are pretty awesome. Like if you look at the spear, it's a 16 attack, which is super high. Length 3, which means for some things they'll be repelling. With 16 attack, they definitely will. So they're going to expand really well. It's pretty hard hitting. 17 damage is pretty good. And then their defense skill is phenomenal. And on top of that, they have Glamour. So in general, these guys are really good. They also have a big old shield. So they're going to be pretty good against archers. They're pretty pricey, but man, they are solid. I like Namidian warriors. If you have scales, you probably are going to want to expand with these guys. If you have a bit of a bless, you're probably going to want to expand with unmarked. That said, I think you can expand with just the Furblogs too. Though I haven't really tested that, but I think I've heard you can. All right, now we have all the Fomorian warriors, and there's a few different varieties of them. They have this guy, the militia, who's basically steaming hot garbage. 8 attack, 21 pierce. I think that's all you need to read for a size 4 unit. This guy's going to stand there and die. Next up, we have the Fomorian javelinist. Notable for having 2 more attacks, so he can actually hit something, but still is going to miss a lot. Pretty expensive. That said, if there's a protection-based thug that's rolling up, and he gets surrounded by javelinists, they're probably going to kill him. Because 23 piercing damage is a lot of damage. And they're going to hit enough. But, I don't know. Still, not a huge fan. The other cool thing is this guy, he's got these 2 javelins. And with 22 piercing damage on a ranged attack, that will peg people to trees. And then we have the spearman, still 20 gold. Notable for not having a javelin. And whereas the javelinist has no shield, the spearman does. So depending on kind of how you're rolling, usually if you mass these guys so that you get like a big javelin volley, a lot of times you can just wipe out some indies and then engage. These guys are going to do better than the spearman. If you're going into like a lot of even short bow fire, which is pretty much all there is in the early age. But short bows will tear this guy apart. So if you're going into a lot of short bows, the spearman's going to be better. But also, you're not going to get a lot of repels from this guy, but he can get a little bit of repel, which is going to, that combined with the shield. This guy you can probably kind of expand by this guy if you have people to fill in the size 4 to 6 gap. So you need some size 2 units. And then next we have the Fomorian warrior. The Fomorian warrior, okay, you'll notice we're above human attack. So we're starting to hit things a little better, and our protection is no longer hot garbage. The protection on this guy was 11, which is pretty bad. The protection on this guy is 16, which is pretty solid. But you're paying for it. These guys are 50% more expensive. But they're solid units. They're solid units. If you have these guys up at the front, and then Skelly Spam or something streaming behind them, these guys can kind of hold the line pretty well. And they've got a fair amount of HP. And the HP is really nice for HP is nice for a lot of things. You're going to survive a lot of battlefield wipes much better. You're going to survive like expansion. You'll be kind of lower attrition a lot of times. You're not going to like die from a single hit of stuff. So these guys are kind of okay. Like on one hand, they're garbage. On the other hand, they're reasonably killy if you have a numbers advantage and you're not like surrounded and Anyway, they're okay. They're okay. They're not like they're not like completely horrible, whereas these guys are like absolutely garbage. And then next up we have the Furblogs. We have these guys with the javelin. Just like a normal human javelin, so it's not exactly going to do the same kind of damage when the Fomorian dudes chunk them. But these guys have pretty high defense. They're going to be able to hang in melee. I think if you're rolling with, I think these guys with the reasonably high attack skill, the Bronze Spear, they would probably be my choice to mix in either with the Javelinists. If you mix them in with the Javelinists, you probably want to have them both throw volleys and then they'll run into melee together. If you mix them in with the Spearman, there's a decent chance you want this guy not to throw his Javelin, just run into melee. Or to space it so he throws the Javelin and then gets into melee about the same time the Spearman or the Warrior get into melee, if you're doing this as an expansion. These guys are probably okay. I'm pretty sure you could expand with them. The resource and recruitment points are pretty cheap. The Furblog Axeman, or Warrior, but he has a Bronze Axe. It's okay. It's reasonably damaging. 18 damage. And then they've got a Slinger, which is you know, a slinger. Possibly okay if you're dealing with elves running in, you need to break glamour, but or like some kind of like extreme chaff like skeletons or I don't know. But normally you don't get slingers. Okay, so we've gone through the units that you can recruit. The units you can summon. We have the Morgan, which these are expensive. These are super expensive. To get a Morgan, it's 5 gems for 1, and it takes a whole mage turn. Right, so you spend 5 gems in a mage turn to get this. Now that said, it's a pretty solid unit. It's got a 18 attack, length 3, life draining, decaying spear, pretty good. And then it's got a lightweight scale mail and a shield. So its protection is okay. It's got super duper high defense, very high attack, especially on the spear. And it's got fear, and it's got glamour, and it's got spirit sight. These guys are pretty good, and they take a bless. So I like the Morgans. I don't know if I think 5 gems is quite what they're worth, because you're going to be using your death gems for a lot of other things. There is another way to get them, and it is with a spell called Dance of the Morgans. And I will show that to you right here. He may die to the barbarians, but at least show it to you. This is Dance of the Morgans. So first you see nothing. Oh, wait, one jumped in. Once they start taking damage, the Morgans are kind of attracted by combat. Okay, this is making it look like there's no Morgans. You kind of need people damage for the Morgans to come. They're not really coming. 1 second, we'll do it properly with an army. This will do it. This didn't trigger Jimmy's. Let's see if this did it. Alright, so Dance of the Morgans is up. You can see, if you're in a combat with like actual armies coming at you, it doesn't really work well if you're like a super combatant casting it, but in an armies you can see we get it like a lot of them. And they're all popping up all over the place. If you cast it with your god, or if you have it with your god present, it's nice because your god will auto-bless them. I believe. But yeah, you can end up getting a ton of them. It's one of the most powerful spells in the game. It's basically like Howl, but instead of getting shitty little wolves that do nothing, you get these monstrosities that... And by the time you get Dance of the Morgans, you're probably going to have stuff like Darkness up and other things. They're absolutely terrifying. And you're also a nation that... Now we're starting to... Like, the late game of Fomoria is terrifying. You have to imagine Wailing Winds up with Dance of Morgans coming out in Darkness. Oh my god. If you're not ready for that... Which, it's really hard to get ready for that. Because these guys cause fear, which, by the way, is really good when you have Wailing Winds up. Yeah. It's disgusting. It's really, really good. Let's take these idiots back with me. So those are the Morgans. They're really good. Next up, we have the Black Dogs. They get dark power. They're stealthy. I'm not a huge fan. You get these guys who are sacred and better. They have Curse Bestower, which is kind of cool. They have more dark power. And, you know, like I said, they're sacred. So, you know, potentially if you take like an attack, focus, bless, these guys are reasonably killy. the black dogs, they're pretty cheap to get in terms of the chaff. You get for 8 gems, you get 20. So like maybe for siege chaff or something, or patrollers, they have value. The Bargers for 7 gems, you get 9. That can be okay if you have them really like doing what, you know, like flanking and not taking. They're not very durable, right? So if they're not taking hits and they're just running on a flank or something and they kill some stuff, they could be worth it. But I don't know. I kind of feel like Twice Born is probably your best use of death gems. Anyway, you have these. They're options. And we talked about Dance of the Morgans. There's probably some other national spells that I'm forgetting about or something. Here's not. We have a national item. And the national item is really cool. It is that same spear. The if I can find it, I might have to research. I can't remember what tech level it is. No, it's already here somewhere. One second, let me find it. I think it's towards the top. Yeah, here it is. Spear of the Morgan. And basically it's the same one. It's a 6 damage magic life drain with length 3 and decay. What's important about this is it's going to be length 4 on your giants. And what that means is when you put it on them, you're getting a few things. You potentially get a repel out of it because you have a length 4 weapon with good stats. It's also going to take care of a lot of their fatigue issues with the drain life and some HP regen issues. It's one of the best one-handed weapons in the game. It is super duper good. And the decay on top of it is just icing on the cake. Icing on the cake. This is a really good thing. Okay, so we've gone through it, and we're not to the part yet where you should feel dirty. The thing is, the nation is more than the sum of its parts. Is what I'm trying to say. What are the parts? We have a super combatant who can potentially wipe out raiding squads and even armies that aren't prepared. I mean, these guys are disgusting. They jump in, they can do soul vortex, invulnerability, potentially liquid body, quicken self, that kind of stuff. Mist form and mirror image aren't going to usually last the whole fight. They're usually going to get popped. So if you're super combating, those you kind of ignore. Like super combating against an army, but the death stuff is still really good. And the water stuff is still really good. So, yeah. Anyway, this guy jumping in, dropping all of that, going to town, potentially with a Repel Bless. You know, he's got the Spear of the Morgans. He's got a Vine Shield or something, because it's going to be really good for the Repel stuff. You can do this. You can... I wouldn't go like too gung-ho on the repelling. Like, I've been talking about it a lot and it's pretty good, but there's a lot of other, like, okay, you can repel, but then something else is going to kill you. So have like many layers of defense. Use your other gear slots to take care of those. Really all you need to get pretty good repels is like the Spear of the Morgans, maybe a little bit of help on your Bless, don't go crazy with it, and then Vine Shield, and then maybe like one item. Use everything else to figure out, like, to cover other holes. But yeah, these guys are terrifying, right? So let's imagine, and we also have these guys. Now let me show you. This is the easiest way, but it's expensive, right? This is the easiest way to do raiding, but this is going to cost 2 Cloud Trapezes, and it's going to cost 4 gems per guy in air elementals. So to get 1 province doing it this way, you were going... Now, they can also move. You don't have to do this magic phase. To do it... I forget how much Cloud Trapeze is. 3. So it's 7 gems for... It's 14 gems to take 1 province. All right? But it's usually pretty fucking effective. I forgot to put them at the back. Normally you want to put them at the back. You can... If you expect only like 1 or 2 PD... The other thing you can do is you can do air elemental and then mist form, and that way if there's like some random arrow shots, you don't get the shit beat out of you. Yeah, this guy got hit and he started running. They're gonna kill everybody before he gets off, though. Oh, not quite. But yeah, the script actually I would recommend is you do mist form after it, and then summon air elemental. And that tends to work, I think, a little bit better. Or you do mist form and then air elemental, air elemental. However you want to do it. Normally, I messed up the script here, but normally you won't lose anything, especially if you're running into what you think, and you'll have scouts out before. I think like Fomoria is one of the nations, and I will say this on camera, you want to build a lot of scouts. And you're going to run them all around the nation you want to hit, and you're going to figure out how much PD they have and stuff like that. And if they only have this, you only need to do 7 gems per. Like one guy doing this for them and 2 air elementals will kill like 6 PD, no problem. But this kind of expensive, kind of expensive, not really expensive, but a little expensive. The other thing we can do is we can send them in pairs of a nature one and a water one. And I'll show you kind of just how the nature and water roll together. I'm going to put a water bracelet on them. You can also put a water gem. And what we're going to do here, we're going to get their script set up. Notice there's no gear, right? And these are just like 400 gold of thugs. The water one's just going to do quickness. Or, I'm sorry, quick and self, quickness. You're going to do bark skin, protection, and then this guy is going to do, they're all going to do mist form. Oops, sorry. Actually, I need to fix this script. Sorry, we get hit by like random arrows. So mist form, and then bark skin, protection, blessing, and then this guy is going to be the same thing. Mist form, quicken self, quickness, blessing. We could also do arrow fend or something if we think there's going to be a lot of crossbows or something. Blessing. Okay. Now this is pretty easy. There's not a lot of PD here, but all right, and you'll just have to trust me. These guys are going to probably kill like 16 PD pretty easily. Now, what's notable about this? Well, we're saving gems. We're not doing the air elementals, right? This super budget. If you look at these guys, you can see once they get, I have a kind of repel-ish bless. But, yeah, they go crazy. 17 defense, 21 attack. Mist form, they've got the protection from bark skin. Yeah, they just run up and kill stuff. They're going to just kill things fast enough that most PD's going to be in big trouble. Now, the other option is... I'll bring this guy back. The other option... Let me put some PD on top of Vanheim's cap here. Is you take a water one. Now, if you do it with the water one, I like putting it like, this is the gear that I would do. Something like this, obviously, okay, copper plate is not great armor, but it's some armor we can forge. We can forge it reasonably early. And, you know, we could potentially do better. I'm not exactly sure. Like, if we're going to be spending water gems on the frost brands, it makes sense maybe to spend another one of our gem types on this. So whatever kind of armor you get, it does not have to be a copper plate. Just some shitty, cheap armor, okay? Don't do it completely naked. And he's going to get a bit of a different script here. Blessing, and then we're going to do liquid body, and then attack closest. The other thing these guys can do, and you can mix it in, is they can do flight. We might not make it here. We're getting a little low. We might should have done arrow shield. I think it would be worth it. We probably took most of our damage from arrow shield. Yeah, we should have done arrow shield. We had an extra script spot, and he has plenty of HP. He just failed a morale check. Let's send him back in. I'll just do arrow shield this time. I think that'll fix it. What was this one? Make sure it wasn't a chest wound. Limp, that's very fine. Oh. Let's say we'll swap out. I'm just gonna get a fresh guy without afflictions. Okay. Okay, we're gonna ignore the air part of this script, okay? I think we're okay with that. I may not, I mean, there might be improvements we could do to it, but I think that limb and the combat speed minus half. And I felt like I should have done air shield at the beginning. Okay, you get the idea, right? Very cheap thug, right? But against a mage or like other stuff, he would get killed. But this is not much gear. This is 15 gems worth of gear, okay? This is super duper cheap. So, you know, potentially you want to have some of these guys. You probably want to mix it up. You probably don't want to do the same thing, because if you just do the same thing, then they just counter that one thing, and then you're like, shit, and you lose like 4 druids in one turn. You have a bunch of different things, they don't know which one to counter. What are they going to do? Well, we've got a few different things. We've got, like, potentially, you know, packs of 2 or 4 of these guys coming in with no gear. We've got, you know, maybe 1 or 2 guys coming in. You know, this guy could also go in. You could send the water and nature guy together. They fluff each other the same way I showed you, but this time they actually have gear on. You know, you can send one guy in with gear. These guys can normal move. They can magic phase move. So these guys are a huge part of the strategy, and I think it's something people like really overlook when they're looking at the nation, because they get so focused on the capital only units, like these guys, because they're so good, and they're like, oh, you know. And the thing of these guys just is like Thunderstrike casters. No. These guys are insane, and they're a huge part of the strategy. So now let's start thinking about it, and this is where hopefully you're starting to get that like dirty elf feeling deep inside your body. Let's say you've been getting some of these Namidians. So let's say you have like 3 raiding parties of Namidians, right? And it's not that late in the game, you know, it's like turn 25 or something, and you've got 3 raiding parties of like 10. Right, so that's only 30. That's not even many. You've got them sneaking into enemy territory. You've got a bunch of scouts running around, so you know how much PD they have. You just got enchantment 4, so you've got cloud trapeze, and you also have alt 3 for a lot of... I don't think anything here is higher than alt 3. Maybe like liquid body is. But I think everything else you can do. You know, the other thing that's good on these guys is mirror image, kind of. The problem with mirror image is the archers will pop it. But, you know, like air shield kind of helps with that. What you kind of need, though, is you kind of need more protection or like a shield. If you have a shield, almost any kind of shield, and you do air defend or like air shield. So you have the shield, you do air shield, and then you have some basic armor, you know, and like ideally you have a headpiece too. And then you're fluffing with like natural protection. If you do that, then mirror image all of a sudden starts becoming good again. Because mirror image is really good in melee, not good against ranged. But we can basically block the range with air shield and having a shield and having like, especially, you know, a hat and a piece of body armor. Anyway. Just thought I would mention that. So anyway, you've got, you know what they've got. You've got your 3 little stealthy raiders, which are going to be running around. By the way, I think these dogs may be stealthy too. Yeah, these dogs are stealthy. These ones are too. So these dogs can potentially be in your little raiding squad. And your guys, yeah. Anyway,
So you've got them running around there. You've got their little normal elfing planned, and then you've got your magic phase planned for, you're going to cloud trap these in a few guys. You're probably going to do these in pairs, maybe have them thug together. Or if you have, I don't think I would do air elementals until I have Conjuration 5. I'd probably send these guys as pairs to take out PD. So you've got that planned. And potentially, most importantly, the turn you time it is a turn you can disable one of their armies with a super combatant. Right? So you've got enough gear built up. Because a lot of times people say, oh, you do this or you do that. And it's this impossible scenario of you have all of this stuff there's no way you possibly have. But I'm talking about really basic stuff. I'm talking about Enchantment 4, Alteration 3. Okay? These guys are not going to have Soul Vortex, right? But the water ones, they can do Breath of Winter or something like that. And then you're still going to do Mist Form. You're not going to have Soul Vortex or anything like that yet. If you wait till you have Soul Vortex, these guys really are going to be able to delete armies. But if you fully kick these guys down on gear, and especially if you're doing Repel stuff, and you know what elemental resistances you're going to need to fight whatever mages are in said army, you can potentially one turn kill their army, take all of their provinces, just about, elf them with troops, and at the same time, you can potentially sail, because I didn't mention these guys are also sailing, so they're not expecting it. You can potentially sail an entire army into position to start sieging down forts. Right? And so, the turn that you hit them, you're rolling in, because I think you should, the way I would probably play them is with, probably a Rainbow Bless, a little bit focused on repelling, but not heavy. You come in with a shit ton of these guys, who, by the way, have really good siege strength. Right? You one turn pop the fort. This is all in the first turn of war. Some coastal fort they built, because they didn't know building coastal forts next to Fomoria wasn't a good idea. Right? Yeah, and I mean, can you imagine that? You lose all of your territory just about, or 80% of your territory the first turn of war. But I want to spell out here it's expensive. To do this is very expensive. Each of your little thug raiding teams is going to be 6 gems, because it's 3 per. So that's pretty expensive, because let's say we roll out, let's say we take 6 provinces doing it. So we've got 12 thugs. We have our stealthy raiders take another 3 provinces. And then we have a Fomorian king jump in. So the 6 provinces we took are coming at the price of 6 air gems each. So that's 36 air gems to take those, right? The stealthy rating is free. The Fomorian giant, he's going to be embodying a lot of gems, because all the gems gems in the items he's wearing. And you might launch in 2 of them to pick off some scattered forces that you see running around. But that's going to cost a fair amount of gems. So the point I'm trying to drive home is that, and we could do more, depending on how many Fomorian druids you have, you might do more. But you can see how basically it's like a capacitor. You build up all this energy and then, pop. It kind of explodes. You destroy them. And then, you kind of pick up the pieces of whatever's left afterwards with your proper army. The nice thing about doing this, too, is, by the way, these guys who are, naked running in pairs, they're super good behind province defense, right? You can just have them, either you can set them up to thug, and then them thugging, even without any gear, right? Especially a bit of an attack bless. Them thugging with the support of PD is kind of crazy. So potentially, while you're doing the save up of air gems, you can also save up some gold. And then every province you go into, you could potentially drop 20 PD or 15 PD or something, and then have these guys in the defending. If you think he's going to do a light counter rating, take all my stuff back the next turn. You can also concentrate all your dudes in one province, right? If you know he's going to go to that one, and all of a sudden, all the Fomorian druids who went in, they're all coming to this other province and just casting lightning bolt and shit behind a lot of PD. It's absolute chaos. So, in the early and mid game, this is a nation that thrives on chaos, right? Other people, maybe they get an army that's killed off, you don't have a nap with them, you don't even need a big border. You just, boom, take everything. So it's a very, very fast nation, and that's one of the things that makes it really good. They can all of a sudden just get way, way ahead. The other thing, so that's like early mid-game, right? You've got thugging, you've got super combatants, and these guys, by the way, come out early. Like, you get one of these guys twice more, and you get some really, really good gear on them. They can totally delete armies. So, that's kind of like early and mid-game. And by the way, this is not late game. This is like mid-game, like early mid-game. Right? This is enchantment 4. Like, what you're going to want to get anyway, because you're going to want Cloud Trap keys. You pick up Twice Born for free, you probably auto-convert one of these guys just because you don't want to... The thing is, or you start using them recklessly. You Twice Born them, use them recklessly or something, because you're going to want one of these for your first war. Because just one of these jumping on top of an army with like the best gear you can make, it's going to just change the pace of the war in the game for you. Now, if they're expecting it, then it's probably not going to work. But that's not really the situation I described. Unless they're smart and they're attacking you and they're expecting it. Because they're like, I'm going to kill Fomoria, we're going to have an army that's going to go and it's going to be mostly immune to thugs and super combatants. Okay. That's a pretty good plan for dealing with Fomoria in the early game. That was kind of my plan when I was playing Lanka and I attacked Fomoria. I had like 2 of my own thugs that had like Bane Blades on them and like plus attack items. And they were scripted to like jump around and attack large or something. And they weren't solo operators, they're going in with my army. So, and I was attacking really early before we would have all this research. So that's like the Fomoria's early mid-game. And also if you have this Bless, it's going to be super scary attacking. Like, you do not want to... It's one of the weird kind of things about the minions is a lot of times for expansion, having a really defensive focus Bless is better. But a lot of times for your first war, having an offensive Bless is better. The reason for that is a defensive focus Bless, when you support it with PD, doesn't really gain much. But an offensive focus Bless mixed in with PD is ridiculous. So these little guys that we would have, the little unmarked. Oh, one thing I didn't mention, these guys get afflictions whenever you get them. But the unmarked, your sacreds do not. Kind of cool side gig. But anyway, when you're rolling, like these guys, like if you want to rush Fomoria, they have a bunch of like repel-ish unmarked. If you want to rush Fomoria and they have a bunch of repellish unmarked, and they do a PD dump with repellish unmarked behind them, forget about it. You're in trouble. You're in deep shit. So, fortunately, I was fighting a more scales-oriented Fomoria that didn't have that. But I knew they didn't have it because I saw their dragon running around. Yeah. So hopefully you have a little bit of the shit your pants going on with the Fomorian early and mid game. By the late mid game, it's only getting worse. By the late mid game, we have evocation. There's a few things Fomoria really wants. They want evocation, alteration. I would say these are the most important schools for them early, like the early mid game. You're going to need construction stuff, and you're going to need enchantment for so you're going to get enchantment 4 super early. You're going to get alteration 3 super early. You're going to get construction 2 or 4 very early. Right? You're going to get some of these things early. But by the mid game, the first things you're probably going to want to go high in are going to be, depending on what you're fighting, evocation and alteration. If there's a lot of magic weapon stuff running around, which if there's like an Ubar in the game, which there's always an Ubar in the game, then there probably will be. Then I would say probably skip the alteration a little bit. If you go in evocation, we've just got a ton of stuff. We've got Storm at... Like, one of the things we're not great against is arrows. Depending on our units. But we're certainly not fielding archers of our own. We've got javelins, which... but yeah, throwing up Storm and then doing Storm Power, pretty huge for your first couple big wars. If you're bringing in mage support. Yeah, so Storm, super good. Thunderstrike, super good. This is, I think, Evocation 4. The other things are all kind of okay. Wrathful Skies can be good if you've got shock resistance in your Bless. Yeah, Evocation really good. But the real thing that's scary is Wailing Winds and Wind of Death. If you have water or fire in your Pretender design, you can do like Rune Smashers and stuff for Wind of Death. But yeah, the Wind of Death's kind of high. I can't remember if it's 7 or 8. I think it's 7. But Wailing Winds is pretty fast. It's this comes early. This is like 6. So yeah, you get Wailing Winds, and you just, if you have a good timing on Wailing Winds, it is super hard to fight. The other thing you can potentially do if you have magic weapons is drop Stygian Rains. This is something you can totally do. You kind of need Construction 6 to be able to get this off. And that's because you kind of need a water bracelet. But if you have one big staff rolling around, you could totally empower one of your Fomorian kings on the water if you don't have time to run up Construction 6. And that would be worth it to get Stygian Rains off if the enemy doesn't have magic weapons and you do. But I think early age, especially since Ubar got added, everybody just gets it. Magic weapons. So if Ubar doesn't get picked, then it probably won't get picked, because otherwise you may not need it as much in the early age. I mean, it's still pretty good, but there's a bunch of other cool stuff in Evocation you can do, but these are kind of the main ones. The other thing you can kind of do is Rain of Stones. You just need Earth Boots, which is Construction 4, which is like kind of one of the things. You're going to need Construction 4 anyway pretty early. So yeah, you can do Rain of Stones super easily. And it does 5 points of blunt damage. I think it primarily targets the head. So if you're fighting human mages, these guys are pretty good, especially if most of the things you're bringing have hats on, which, like, these guys don't, but you can do, I can't remember if Arrowpin blocks Rain of Stones, but Mistform will, right? So, if these guys are all Mistformed up, Rains of Stone is good. If you're bringing dudes with hats on, noticeably your kings don't, oh no, they do have these, but these guys don't have hats. These guys do have hats. So, potentially you can look at doing Rains of Stone in a fight too. There's a ton of stuff, mileage you're going to get out of Evocation. In some ways, you can get more mileage out of Evocation than almost any other nation in the game. Potentially. I mean, Evocation is really, really good for Fomoria. Alteration also can be really good. The things in Alteration that you can aim for, I mean, obviously we've got the Thug stuff. We've already talked about that, but the big stuff is going to be Fog Warriors, which is pretty good, and Phantasmal Army is also pretty good if you just need to generate chaff. But I think Fog Warriors, obviously, the pretty big one here. In Death, we've got Darkness and Skeletal Legion. Both of these can be really good. Those are the main ones. Drain Life can be really good if you're worried about super combatants on the other side. To do this, you're going to need a Skull Staff on your... A lot of these, actually, like Darkness, you're also going to need a Skull Staff on a Death 3 of your Fomorian Kings, or a Death 3 of your Sorceresses. So, but anyway, there's really good stuff in Alteration. And we don't really have really high magic paths in anything else to do in, like, high Alteration. We get some water to do Frozen Heart, potentially. Maybe we could do, like, Quickening or something, but this is basically it. There's a bunch of other things we could talk about in other schools. Conjuration's good because you're going to get Dance of the Morgans and stuff, which is a kind of game-winning spell. Honestly, Dance of the Morgans comes online really late. I think Fomoria is such a fast-paced nation that by the time you get... most games, Dance of the Morgan's not going to matter. Like, you're probably going to be... If you play Fomoria non-aggressively and you're kind of small by the time you have Dance of the Morgans, like, you could maybe turn it around with that, but I don't know. Fomoria is I think it's a nation you play really aggressively. Yeah. I don't know if I've done my job. My job was to make you feel dirty about how playing Fomoria could be. They have a bunch of really... They don't have a tremendous amount of diversity, but they have a lot. They have thugs, they have super combatants, they have really good battle casters, they have they have good enough sacreds, they have elves, they have sailing. I mean, literally your opponent should never, like, if you're fighting them, like, an army could pop up anywhere. It could be stealthy raiders popping up somewhere, it could be a thug popping up somewhere, it could be a heavily equipped thug popping up somewhere, could be a damn titan popping up anywhere, Like, it's scary. And then your army is no joke. I think the most important thing for Fomoria, like how you can lose, is if your army dies. And I know that sounds kind of like a dumb thing to say. But you can get so overzealous on the raiding stuff that you forget one of the primary things you have to do is to protect your army, right? So if all your mages are running around raiding and dying in raiding and stuff, which by the way, everybody you send out raiding they're eventually going to die. If they keep doing it, raiding is a dangerous occupation, but yeah, so you can have all your mages out doing all this raiding stuff thinking you're really cool. If you do that and they wipe out your army, you're in for a hard time. Because while you can go kind of gas and burn around the map and just take everything, you also have to be able to offer major resistance to an enemy army coming in. And if an army comes in that can kill thugs and super combatants, and especially if they aren't going to be terribly worried about Wailing Winds, they're going to basically mop the floor with you unless you have a comparably strong army of your own. So, Fomoria can get kind of overzealous and then lose an army, and if they lose a major army, then it's almost like all the wind is sucked out of their super combatant and thug sails, right? Because in some ways, the thugs and the super combatants are able to frolic while the enemy's really worried about dealing with the major threat, which is your army that's going to be taking their infrastructure. So I guess what I would say to that, how does that all add up? Well, going on the offense with Fomoria is a major commitment, right? It's a major commitment. It's going to be a huge commitment in gyms. It's going to be a huge commitment in mages. So you're going to need a lot of mages. Like, if you want to go on the offensive with Fomoria and you're like, oh, this is just going to be a light war, we're going to keep all my mages researching and stuff, I think that is not the Fomoria I know, right? Like, the way I would play Fomoria is, all right, we're going to war, everybody out of the fucking lab. Some people are going to roll with, not everybody, some people are going to research, but like the default mindset is not, oh, everybody's there researching. The default mindset is we've hit our timing for the war, let's roll, right? And once you eat that neighbor, then you can decide if you want to rest again while you build back up your gym reserves. So would you want to neighbor the Fomoria I described? Oh, hell no. Oh, hell no. It sounds horrible. It sounds horrible. I also wouldn't want to attack into it. Like a repel-blessed Fomoria, thugs, and super. It is a damn frightening nation. It is a frightening nation. And it's one of those things. I think there's not like an easy time to attack them. And it kind of only gets worse. The best thing you can hope for is they have really bad Lexite searching. But anyway, guys, I'll show you my pretender for this. There's a lot of different pretenders you can do. Please don't take this as how a Fomorian pretender should look like. This is the one I just used. It's an imprisoned Hellblessed, basically. We haven't completely dumpstered our scales. We have growth. But, yeah, they're not great. You can go, I think your default heat preference is, I forget. I think it's neutral. Yeah, it's neutral. You go heat or cold depending on who you're worried about, like what scales you want in this particular game. But yeah, this one we went cold 3 because we have cold resistance. I don't think we have fire resistance on our segments. But yeah, we got some attack and we got blood surge. That's the extent of the investment in the repel shenanigans. But it's also just going to make our troops legitimately need this to be functional. You can't have such low attack skill on a size 4 unit, right? They legitimately need this. But if you give it to them, they're actually pretty decent. Right, and with the defense skill, and then once they get the blood surge, because they're going to get blood surge, they hit pretty hard. They're going to be doing some cool stuff. We've got most of the major resistances covered. We've got shock resistance. We've got minor cold resistance. And look, if we put up Wrathful Skies, will we take some damage through it? Yeah, but we've got really high HP units. We can take some hits from Wrathful Skies. Reinvigoration 3, good for thugging. Very good for thugging. Right, this is for our tiny little guys who are going to be, and we probably should have done bless earlier in the script. I forgot what my bless was, but you probably want to do like mist form and then bless, and then maybe like air shield and then something else, because you want to go ahead and get that reinvigoration ticking so that by the time you're done with your buff cycle for your little no gear thugs, their fatigue isn't that high. Anyway, this is going to be reinvigoration. Is so good on Fomoria. It's going to be good for the casters because remember these same druids who are sacred are going to be rolling up doing Thunderstrike spam. Going to be real nice for that. Magic resistance, pretty good on our thugs. I think it's one of the main vulnerabilities of Fomoria is running into like really strong astral nations that can kind of pick them apart. The death stuff is just incidental. Poison resistance is pretty important. One of the things Fomoria does not have is it does not have good nature mages. You do have really high HP units, and you can like hit up thugs and super combatants to not give a shit about poison. But when your main army is rolling out, if you have a really long grindy battle and you don't have poison resistance, and they put up foul vapors, you're going to take a lot of attrition. And the thing is, you can afford, like, let's say you have some chaff bulking up your army just to kind of take down walls or to like win the fight. Like, that's fine if that all dies. But you really don't want your sacred count getting reset because it is cap only. And you can't summon them or get more. That's why I was saying, like, you really want to protect your main army. So that's what this is for, and then the Blood Surge. The scales aren't great. I haven't actually played Fomoria in a multiplayer game, I don't think ever. I've tested expansion a few times to see what works. You may need to swap up some of the scales. You know, worst case, you can sack some magic drain, maybe get a little bit more over here, shuffle these up, maybe get one more Dominion point. You know, there's different things you can do. You could even burn growth if you want to. You don't have to have growth. You do want some money. I don't think you want to like go completely hell scales, but or like hell bless and have no scales. But yeah, anyway, this is one build. Another one, I think this is something like what the guy had in our Yomi series. This is again kind of repel shenanigans. I throw on recuperation too, because the recuperation's kind of nice for your white mages. Because they're gonna come out all afflicted. This will heal them back up. You could totally get something different and better, like Bark Skin and I don't know. Or Berserk or something. This is just repel with recuperation and defense and some cold resistance. Cold resistance is nice if there's an Niflheim in the game, you need to kill him. And then this guy's a super combatant too, which is nice. And then I think I have some other dude that I think this guy is like if you're not even going into the thugs at all, you just want to have good scales. This guy has really good scales. We didn't have to sack temperature, so we're going to be getting way more gold. We've got luck. We don't have magic, which maybe we would want to bump up at the expense of maybe one or two of these. We get the poison resistance because that is a major weakness. We don't really want to get foul vapors dropped on us. In this case, what we have is a caster bless. So we've got reinvigoration and we've got farcaster, which Thunderstrike, I forget the range. We may not really need it. Maybe a little overkill. Range, 100. Oh yeah, we don't need it. Well, yeah, you could switch it up then. I'm not totally sure what you would get. Because, yeah, you don't need Far Strike for Thunderstrike. I was thinking you could hit the back lines better. But, yeah, I mean, you can mix up. You come up, pick your caster bless, okay? There's a bunch of different caster blesses you can do. I think that the key part for Fomoria with the caster bless, and don't forget you can do aim, this spell, would probably be like some air, earth thing. Air, earth. Who has air, earth here? The other thing, too, is if you're going to do a caster bless, I guess you still might want Sacreds to deal with foul vapors. Depends on who your neighbors are. Air, earth. I don't see you. You'd probably do it on just one of these guys. I don't know. Probably like this. And this also is going to give you Staff of Elemental. Whatchamacallit. I mean, you could totally just do this. You're going to be a little vulnerable to foul vapors, but the other thing you can do, and I didn't mention, is Mass Flight, which would be really good. Especially if you're worried about foul vapors, Mass Flight's a pretty good way to deal with that. And then Precision. right? And with precision and reinvigoration, and then if you also cast aim or wind guide, you'll be dropping some very potent thunder strikes. So, guys, anyways, I don't know if I accomplished my mission, but I certainly think they're, if not the strongest, one of the strongest nations in the early age. They just could get such immense momentum. Like, there's other nations that have a better late game potential than they do, but I don't think any nation has the tempo that Fomoria can have. The absolute, like, the tempo, and they have so many options to do the tempo. Like, Calum can have a lot of tempo too. But Calum usually isn't doing it as many ways. They've got, like, the Eagle King, and then they've got armies with Thunderstrike. And here we've got, like, thugs, we've got stealthy raiders, we've got all this stuff. Anyway. We got super combatants, and Eagle Kings are good, but they're not super combatants. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed. Anyway. Take care. Please don't play Fomoria in a game with me. Peace.